there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the HalloScream review series. Today, we're reviewing Scream. Scream with werewolves. No. I mean, Scream with vampires. Oh, damn.
Damn!
Scream with Michael Myers. Okay. Before we dive into this, I'm aware that many of you love H20. Some say it's a return to form for the Halloween franchise. Funny enough, that same "it's a return to form" or "it's the best since the original" has been going around a lot lately. So what's the big deal with H20? What made it so popular and beloved among horror fans? Well, to find out, let's take a look at the time period this movie came out in. It was the tail end of the 90s. At this point, the slasher genre was on its last leg, and horror in general was beginning to take a new turn. Some existing horror franchises from the 80s were putting out lackluster entries. This is where we began seeing the Jason Goes to Hell, Freddy's Dead, and the Bride of Chucky's of the world pop in. Horror was on a downward slope. There were some standouts though. Candyman, Wes Craven's New Nightmare, The Mummy, Predator 2, and even Army of Darkness were pretty good. Of course, there was one movie that stood out even among them that gave a little spark of life to the dying slashers. That movie was Scream. Scream somehow reinvigorated interest in slashers with its constant references to the movies of old. It also gave us a new slasher icon in Ghostface. Its use of exploiting cliches from older horror films and poking fun at them became popular in its own right. Of course, even this franchise became a victim of its own trend, with lackluster sequels. I know, gasp, clench your pearls. Yeah, that's right, I didn't really enjoy the Scream sequels, and honestly, I thought the first Scream was average at best. Now, I won't deny the cultural impact the film had on the world of horror. With that said, it began setting a standard for horror films going into the 2000s. Hence the reason I made that joke at the beginning of this video. It seemed that every horror film coming out felt like Scream. You have Scream with vampires, werewolves, sharks, and now we've come to H20. And it's also no coincidence that the original Scream heavily referenced the original Halloween. So much so that they're watching the damn movie in the third act of the film. So, while I can appreciate Scream for its impact on the slasher genre, it also set the groundwork for more shitty Halloween sequels. That's why, whenever I watch H20, it feels like I'm watching Scream. So, with that all being said, let's dive straight into this. Halloween, 20 years later. First off, I find it funny that this movie opens up with the same song that Halloween 2 ended with. It's important since this movie is retconning 4 through Curse of Michael Myers out of existence. I also find it hilarious because this movie will once again remind us of a film that featured Michael Myers getting his eyes shot out, being caught in an explosion, and being engulfed in flames, thereby burning to a cinder. Again, the filmmakers are ignoring continuity, something that's becoming really annoying at this point. Anyways, the opening scene takes place in Langdon, Illinois, and we see a familiar face in Nurse Chambers. Remember her? She was the nurse driving with Dr. Loomis in the original film. Curious as to why she's back all of a sudden. Last time we seen her was in Halloween 2. It's also October 29th, 1998, so we're approaching the 20th anniversary of the Haddonfield Massacre. It's nice I can use that saying in something that isn't fanfiction or wishful thinking for this franchise. So, as Nurse Chambers goes to unlock the door to her house, she notices that her porch light is broken. She then proceeds to open the door and hesitate to walk through. You can hear some breathing in the background, so we can safely assume that someone is in the house still. And instead of doing the typical cliche of walking into the house like an idiot, she actually goes next door for help. Well, that's a nice change of pace. She ends up finding 2 kids, and one of them is a young Joseph Gordon-Levitt. He goes into Nurse Chambers' house, making some vague, shitty threats. If it's Michael in here, these threats mean jack to him, especially considering what Michael has been through in these films. Levitt walks through the house and comes across Nurse Chambers' office. It's a complete mess, and it looks like someone was there searching for something. This will become important later. He moves on to the kitchen and starts taking some beers from the refrigerator. What a little shit, taking adult beverages without asking. So the coast is clear, it seems, and they each go their separate ways. But we know something is up. It's never that easy, especially in these kinds of films. I guess one positive I can say so far is that they are building up the inevitable reveal of Michael. As she makes her way to her office, she shines a flashlight and we see a picture of Dr. Loomis. A nice touch considering he passed away after Curse. She looks on her desk to find a folder with the label Laurie Strode. The folder is empty, so we know someone was looking for info on Laurie, and clearly they found it. Nurse Chambers hears a noise and she sees her front door is wide open. And from behind her, we get our first look at Michael. She runs to Levitt's house looking for help, only to find an ice skate embedded in his head, and giving us our first cold body of the movie. Yeah, okay, I know. Terrible joke. Anyways, she runs to the back door and finds the other kid dead, and we get our second look at Michael. And my god, look at that mask. Look how cool it is. It almost looks just like the classic mask. Man, I can't wait to see this mask in action throughout the movie. Oh. We then see Nurse Chambers get killed with a throat cut while calling for the police that showed up at her house. Damn, why would they just kill her off like that? I get she was a minor character, but it's just weird that they would bring her back just for that. Well, at least we won't have to see this shameful act of bringing back legacy characters just to kill them off again.
This is for Dr. Loomis.
Oh, come on! Okay, here's my question. How the hell did these two knucklehead cops not hear a damn window shattering? They were only a few feet away, and the sound of glass breaking isn't exactly quiet. Anyways, we then see Michael driving away in a car, and it cuts to the next day. The police are at the scene of the murders, and we get a little exposition dump of the whole Halloween story, as if we needed a reminder. They talk about Loomis passing away and how Michael's body was never found. They also explain how Loomis had been looking for Michael as well. And I find it funny and a bit coincidental that this is similar to my idea of how Michael should have never been caught and how he's still out there somewhere. The problem is that they made this movie a sequel to Halloween 2. So how is it once again Loomis and Michael survived that damn explosion at the hospital? Now, one could say this movie is a direct sequel to the first Halloween, and that the only reason we are seeing pictures of Halloween 2 is because the filmmakers are using that material the same way they would use footage from Halloween 2 when Halloween Kills. But obviously this isn't the case, as they reveal that Michael and Laurie are still siblings anyways. God, we're not even 20 minutes into this movie and look how many issues are popping up. We get the H20 title card and a new version of the Halloween theme. Everything I've seen so far in this movie feels and looks like Scream, and it annoys the hell out of me. I said in a previous review that Halloween eventually began imitating the imitators, and this movie is a great example. The opening feels like Scream, some of the music feels like Scream, and this is supposed to be Halloween, damn it. Oh, and they have a voiceover play of someone impersonating Dr. Loomis when he was talking to Sheriff Brackett about Michael, but it sounds so cheap, and it's word for word what he said. Why didn't they just get a clip from the movie and use it? Why redo it? Or even better, why do this at all? This opening is trying to make Michael's return feel more triumphant. The problem is that Michael's been back too many times. Hell, he's been back more times than the goddamn Terminator.
I'll be back.
I'll be back.
I'm back.
I'll be back.
What?
I'm almost out. I'll be back.
You've been back enough. I'll be back.
As we roll through the opening credits, we see a newspaper clip saying that Laurie Strode died in a car crash. Funny enough, this is how Jamie Lloyd's father died in Halloween 4. Of course, we find out that Laurie isn't actually dead, but she faked her death and chose a new name. Her new name is Carrie Tate, and she's now in charge of a private high school. This idea does make some sense. If you found out that the person who tried to kill you was never caught, one of two things would happen. One, you fake your death, move to a new place, and change your name. Or you do it the badass way. Build yourself a home, rig it with traps and safety protocols, train yourself to fight and use guns, then wait for the SOB to come to your door and waste them. Personally, I like the latter option because it sounds more like my style. Regardless, Laurie is still alive and she's been having recurring nightmares about Michael. These nightmares result in Laurie screaming in her sleep. We then see her son John run in to try and wake her up. Yeah, that's right, Laurie has a son now. You know, I had a bit of a messed up yet funny theory. Maybe H20 isn't a direct sequel to Halloween 2, but to Curse of Michael Myers. Obviously, there would be a lot of continuity they would be ignoring in this film, considering there's nothing here about the Cult of Thorn. But then again, they've been saying screw the continuity since Halloween 4, so who cares? But I do find the idea that Laurie hated what happened to her so much, and that she abandoned her own daughter and rushed to California, too funny. And of course, it means Laurie had let her daughter die. Some grade A parenting right there. Anyways, the whole point of this film is that Michael is tracking down Laurie after all these years. We get a group of these high schoolers that stay behind while the other students go on a field trip. This is clearly a setup for the suspense building, given the isolation feel of the first two films. Obviously, they had to do this because it would be kind of hard to have Michael stalking people if there's a bunch of kids walking around. Just like in the previous films, the characters are forgettable. And it's a shame too because we have Laurie's son John, who is the only other character that gets any kind of importance. And he sucks too. At least with the Thorn trilogy, you cared about Jamie. On top of the fact that she was just a child, she was the last of the Myers family aside from Michael. So her importance to the story was key. Now we have three living Myers relatives, Michael, Laurie, and now John. And how about Laurie? Well, she's alright, I guess. Many fans praise Jamie's performance and the depth that the character has post Halloween 2. Her PTSD from that night 20 years ago is a decent fit. I see quite a few fans say they prefer this version of Laurie over how they handled her in Halloween 2018. One argument I've heard is the H20 portrayal is more realistic and fits with the genre better. I'd like to discuss this, and I know I'm jumping ahead very early for Halloween 2018. With that said, I feel this is an appropriate time to discuss this while we're here at Halloween 20 years later. When discussing things we like in movies, particularly in horror movies, we often talk about fictional scenarios. Many horror films in general are unrealistic, whether it be Jason Voorhees being resurrected Frankenstein style, or Freddy Krueger killing you in your dreams. We as the audience go into these films with a suspension of disbelief. So when someone says they prefer the H20 version of Laurie over the 2018 version because it's more realistic, I scratch my head. What you should say is that you prefer the H20 version over the 2018 version because you like it more. If you want to talk realistic in the Halloween franchise, then please explain how Michael and Loomis survived being caught in an explosion and being engulfed in flames. By the way, this movie is a direct sequel to Halloween 2. So do yourself a favor and drop the realistic argument, because very little in this franchise is realistic. For me, I prefer the 2018 version not only because I like badass women with guns, but because it can work in the proper scenario. It doesn't work very well in 2018 because the filmmakers made the retarded decision to have Michael get caught in 1978 and be incarcerated for 40 years. It's like, yeah, the guy who tried to kill you is still alive, and there's a possibility he could get out, but would it fit with the Laurie we get in 2018? I think this movie, H20, had the perfect setup for the Sarah Connor ripoff Laurie because they took the idea of Michael not being caught 20 years, and it would make sense that Laurie might want to be prepared should death come knocking on her door because he's still out there somewhere. Regardless, we have PTSD Laurie for this film, but she does eventually fight back, and for me, this last act is the best part of the movie. Laurie's kicking ass, and her first face-to-face with Michael was iconic in a way, but it's kind of ruined by this fucking mask. What happened to this mask? It looks so cheap, and seeing Michael's eyes, especially when he opens them wide, looks so stupid. I'm sorry, what did Loomis say in the original Halloween?
I met this 6-year-old child with this blank, pale, emotionless face and the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes.
Right. The blackest eyes my ass. Why didn't they stick with the mask in the opening scene? Who knows, and honestly, who cares? Aside from the final act, this movie actually bored me. The suspense was average at best, the portrayal of Michael was not as intimidating as previous incarnations, and most of the characters were forgettable, and honestly, I'm ready to move on to the next crap fest. There are a couple of noteworthy characters. I did enjoy LL Cool J. He was pretty funny as always, plus I loved him in Deep Blue Sea, so I guess that's something. We also have a cameo from Jamie's mother, Janet Leigh. I think she is also driving the car from Psycho, which is a nice Easter egg considering the original Halloween was very much inspired by Psycho. Okay, let's talk about the ending. So after Laurie supposedly defeats Michael, we see they put his body in an ambulance. And we know what's going to happen. Michael has survived so much at this point, and it's very unlikely he died this time. But then we get thrown a curveball. Laurie steals the ambulance at gunpoint and drives off. As Michael begins waking up, she crashes the car and Michael gets pinned between the vehicle and a tree trunk. Laurie and Michael then begin touching hands, which is weird. Why is Laurie getting emotional with Michael as if she's about to put down a loved one? Did she forget that this guy killed her friends and tried to kill her too? She doesn't care in the end because she cuts his goddamn head off. As far as conclusive deaths go, this would be the second best. Obviously, you can't get any more dead than burning to a cinder, but who cares? Michael's dead, Laurie lives happily ever after despite all the murder and mayhem. all is well that ends pointless, I guess, and we can finally say goodnight to the Halloween franchise. Wait.
Trick or treat, motherfucker.
Well, looks like Michael really can't die because the Hollywood overlords won't let him. I said this before, and now with several sequels under the belt, I'll say it again. Halloween did not need a Michael Myers sequel, at least for a long time. If we had this film come out without the Thorn trilogy, it would have been better, albeit with some modifications to make it feel more like Halloween and less like Scream. Regardless, like the rest of this franchise, Michael's presence has been dulled to the point of ridiculousness, and we aren't even done yet. I'll say this, I'll take Halloween H20 over Resurrection any day. At least Laurie doesn't die in some needless cameo. So, sorry to the H2O fans if you didn't like how I glossed over this film. It's just, I have very little feelings about this movie. It sits in the middle for me on good and bad. I think the Thorn trilogy hurt this franchise in ways we can only imagine. But don't worry, because it'll get worse. Well, thank you all once again for tuning in. We're about to head into the 2000s era of Halloween, and dear God, is it gonna suck. There are good aspects. With that said, it's not my favorite era. Anyways, tune in next time for Halloween Resurrection. A special thanks goes out to Mother Mulder and Kyle Curtis Flett, part of the Dark Aether Files Patreon. So with that all being said, thank you all very much for watching, listening, and supporting. And as always, my fellow investigators, remember, the entertainment is out there. I'm Special Agent Spooky Clutter.
I'm Special Agent Carter Sauce.
Special Agent Dr. Richtofen.
And until next time, fellow investigators, remember,
The entertainment.
The entertainment
The entertainment is out there.